bring in Piper Sandler's Brent Bracelin. Brent, you had a nice note sort of trying to frame how we're going to think about this. And one of your pieces of advice is to basically challenge any bias that you've heretofore had, right?
Yeah, it's a little interesting in the time that we're at right now. Things are moving so fast. I know just 4 months ago, we were talking about maybe a handful of large language models ruling them all. Today, there are now 50 plus large language models trained on 1 billion plus parameters. And so I think it's important because we're trying to make an assessment of what the world's going to look like here in the next 3, 4, 5 years. And the ground is literally moving underneath us. Very hard to be super confident in some of the conclusions. So yes, our first observation after 100 investor meetings and company meetings and bus tours around AI is really question everything.
What do you do about consensus? Even a lot of the desks this week, who, by the way, have been extremely active, have said, look, this is going to be a contest between those who want to ride this wave and yet challenge it or somehow assume it's an enormous pull forward of spend. How are you thinking about that?
So our thesis is not to fight consensus early on. I remember back in the dot-com era, right? The brick and mortars were dead, right? And those asset classes were impaired for a long period of time, end up being basically an overstated risk. But at this point in this cycle, I think it's really important to not fight consensus. The consensus is on AI, the big get bigger, and I think that's going to continue to be the best way to play the AI trends here. That's where you're seeing the Microsofts of the world now. We're just in the matter of, 5 months, scale to a $500 million revenue run rate.
Microsoft, sure, but Brent, you put Oracle on your list of AI all-stars, which it was curious to me because we haven't heard a lot of hype around Oracle, and usually that's not one of the sexier ones.
Yeah, so they have a business called OCI, which is basically a competing alternative to an AWS or even an Azure. It's a $2 billion business today. We think it actually has some really interesting design characteristics that lends itself well to this AI movement. They have a GPU supercluster. They're basically now the infrastructure layer for NVIDIA's offering as well. So they're a very close relationship with NVIDIA there. And so I think you're going to see that $2 billion OCI business scale to $10 billion, largely driven around some of these new AI workloads and some custom application workloads. I think that changes the growth profile of Oracle, and I think you're going to see improving margins over time as well.